Imagine the scene. You are at home. A conversation is happening around the table, but some words seem to slip away as if they were spoken from behind a wall. That constant effort to fill in the blanks, to decipher incomplete sentences, is not only exhausting, it changes the way the brain works. Science today reveals something that until recently seemed unlikely. When hearing loss is not treated, the brain has to work harder to process sounds and voices, diverting energy from essential functions such as attention, memory, and reasoning. And this energy theft is cumulative, potentially accelerating cognitive decline in those already over 60 years old. Researchers from renowned universities, analyzing data from hundreds of thousands of elderly individuals, have found that hearing loss is not just an issue of communication or quality of life, but one of the strongest modifiable factors for the development of dementia. In other words, something that can be prevented. Unlike other factors that require complex changes like diet, exercise, or medication, hearing now has a practical path: quick diagnosis and rehabilitation with modern hearing aids. And the question guiding this investigation is simple but powerful. Could wearing a hearing aid, something seemingly trivial, actually protect memory and the brain in the long term? A groundbreaking study, published in prestigious medical journals, brought robust evidence. Individuals who treated hearing loss experienced significantly slower cognitive decline compared to those who did not. This changes the entire preventive logic. If before the message was hearing better to communicate better, today it goes beyond. Hearing better to think better, remember better, and live with more independence. This shift in perspective is vital because it connects something physical and perceptible, hearing loss, to something invisible and feared, the loss of memory and autonomy. This scientific link between sound and cognition creates a new narrative for health after 60. Caring for hearing is not vanity, not luxury, not just quality of life. It is a way to protect the brain against diseases that rob identity, history, and independence. And this is the first building block of the path we will construct in this script, a journey that begins in the ear, but whose final destination is the preservation of the mind. Hearing loss is so common in aging that many treat it as something normal, almost inevitable, but the numbers show it goes far beyond a simple inconvenience. Global estimates indicate that more than 430 million people currently live with some degree of disabling hearing loss, and among those over 60, this number grows exponentially. In recent national surveys, almost 1 in 3 older adults show significant hearing loss, and in some countries this rate reaches nearly half of the elderly population. What was once interpreted as a social difficulty or sensory limitation now appears in medical reports as a critical risk factor for dementia, surpassing even conditions like hypertension or diabetes in terms of impact. The risk is not small. Longitudinal studies following thousands of older adults for over a decade showed that untreated hearing loss is associated with up to twice the risk of developing dementia. In cases of severe loss, the risk may rise to nearly 5 times. These numbers are comparable to classic risk factors for neurological diseases such as obesity or smoking, which completely changes the way hearing health should be regarded. It is no longer a secondary or aesthetic matter, but a condition that directly influences the brain's ability to maintain memory, language, planning, and independence. The problem becomes even more serious when we look at delays in diagnosis. On average, a person takes 7 to 10 years to seek help after the first signs of hearing loss. That means nearly a decade of brain overload, unnecessary cognitive effort, and avoidable social isolation. During this period, the brain adapts negatively. Areas linked to memory and attention are diverted to decode sounds, while important neural connections weaken due to lack of auditory stimulation. This phenomenon, called neural disuse, contributes to accelerated cognitive decline. The numbers also translate into social and healthcare costs. In rapidly aging countries such as Brazil, the World Health Organization estimates that untreated hearing loss represents billions in annual costs, ranging from greater dependency and more hospitalizations to increased need for caregivers. Each untreated case of hearing loss means not just one person struggling to hear, but an overburdened family, a pressured healthcare system, and a collective risk of increased dementia prevalence at a population level. Therefore, when we talk about hearing and memory, We are not talking about something restricted to whether an individual uses a hearing aid or not. We are talking about a public health issue that carries heavy numbers and profound consequences. Understanding this weight is essential to pave the way toward the solution. Hearing treatment not only restores sound to the ear, but also returns quality of life and protection to the brain. The debate about the relationship between hearing and memory gained momentum in recent years, but it was in 2023 that one of the greatest scientific milestones brought robust evidence: the ACHIEVE clinical trial. This study was designed to answer objectively a question that had circulated for decades among doctors and patients. Does treating hearing loss with hearing aids really slow cognitive decline? Unlike observational analyses, which merely follow populations over time, ACHIEVE was a randomized controlled trial, the highest standard of scientific quality. More than 900 older adults aged 70 to 84 were included, all with mild to moderate hearing loss, but without dementia at the start of the study. They were divided into two groups. One received complete hearing intervention with modern hearing aids, adaptation training, and specialized follow-up. The other received only a healthy aging program with guidance on exercise, diet, and lifestyle. For 3 years, participants were evaluated with tests of memory, attention, and processing speed. The results drew the attention of the scientific community. Among those considered high risk, with a family history of cognitive decline, chronic illnesses, or other vulnerability factors, the use of hearing aids reduced the rate of cognitive decline by almost 50%. Compared to the control group, this means that for those who needed it most, hearing intervention not only improved sound perception, but also preserved critical brain functions. In lower-risk older adults, the difference was less pronounced, but still positive. Another relevant finding from ACHIEVE was improved social engagement. Participants who received hearing aids reported greater interaction with friends and family, fewer depressive symptoms, and better quality of life. This social dimension matters because isolation is one of the greatest accelerators of cognitive decline. In other words, the benefit is not only direct, from ear to brain, but also indirect, through the restoration of relationships and interactions that keep the mind active. The impact of ACHIEVE was so significant that it began to be cited in international reports and new health guidelines. It demonstrated that hearing aids can no longer be seen as mere communication accessories. They are tools of cognitive preservation with the potential to change the course of brain aging. This is the central point that places hearing as a priority in preventive medicine and redefines how we think about aging with autonomy. In 2024, the Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention and Care, one of the most respected groups in global medicine, strongly reinforced what the numbers had already been showing. Hearing loss is the most important modifiable risk factor for dementia. This report did not emerge from nowhere. It gathered decades of data, reviews of dozens of population studies, and clinical evidence such as that from the ACHIEVE trial. The result was a clear, direct, and hard-to-ignore message. Among all risk factors, we can change throughout life, such as hypertension, smoking, obesity, sedentary behavior, and social isolation. Hearing loss ranks first in impact. The reason is simple, and at the same time powerful. Hearing is a constant gateway of stimuli to the brain. When that gateway closes or narrows, the brain not only loses information from the environment, but also suffers a reduction in activity in critical regions related to memory and language. Over time, this understimulation paves the way for weakened neural connections and accelerates vulnerability to neurodegenerative processes. The Commission made it clear, treating hearing loss early can delay, on a population scale, thousands of new cases of dementia. One striking data point from the report was the estimate that up to 8% of global dementia cases could be prevented or postponed with proper treatment of hearing loss. In absolute numbers, this means millions of people preserving their memory and independence through an accessible hearing intervention. For comparison, factors such as sedentary lifestyle or hypertension rank lower in impact, showing that in many cases, a simple hearing aid can be as effective, or even more, in protecting the brain than traditional measures. In addition, the Lancet Commission issued a social warning. Ignoring hearing loss widens inequalities. Older adults with low income or living in regions without access to diagnosis are deprived not only of the right to hear, but also of the chance to reduce their risk of dementia. This turns hearing into a global public health issue that must be addressed with policies ensuring access to hearing aids, awareness campaigns, and training for healthcare professionals. Therefore, the 2024 message could not be clearer. If there is a strategic starting point to protect the brain during aging, it lies in the ear. Treating hearing loss is not just about restoring sounds, but about investing in a kind of cognitive insurance against memory loss. The Commission places this issue at the center of the global medical agenda, and it is up to each family to understand that caring for hearing is, above all, caring for the mind and autonomy. Not all older adults carry the same risk of cognitive decline linked to hearing loss. Science shows that there are specific profiles that benefit the most when treatment begins early, before damage accumulates. Among them are older adults with a family history of dementia, those already facing chronic conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, and also those who live in contexts of greater social isolation. For these groups, each year of delay in treatment may represent a significant acceleration of cognitive decline, since the brain is already under other pressures, compromising its functional reserve. Another key point is the difference between treating early and treating late. Longitudinal studies confirm that the earlier hearing loss is identified and treated, the greater the gains in cognitive preservation. When an older adult begins using hearing aids at the first signs of loss, the brain can keep its memory and language networks active, avoiding neural disuse. On the other hand, when treatment begins late, after years of untreated hearing loss, hearing aids still bring clear benefits, such as better communication and improved quality of life. But the potential for cognitive recovery is more limited, as some brain connections have already undergone irreversible damage. Risk profiles also include older adults with greater exposure to noisy environments throughout life, such as factory workers, drivers, farmers, and military personnel. In these cases, hearing loss tends to appear earlier and more intensely, increasing the need for regular monitoring. Likewise, people with lower educational levels are more vulnerable, as their cognitive reserve, the brain's ability to compensate for losses, tends to be smaller, making the impact of hearing loss faster and deeper. Another group that deserves attention is older adults who already report memory difficulties, even without a dementia diagnosis. For them, treating hearing can be the difference between stabilizing symptoms and advancing to a more severe condition. This is a central point doctors have been emphasizing. One should not wait for hearing loss to get worse before seeking help. The earlier the diagnosis and intervention, the greater the chance of preserving cognition and long-term independence. Thus, understanding who benefits most from hearing treatment is also a way of organizing health priorities. Identifying risk profiles and acting early means transforming hearing into an active prevention tool against dementia. It is the difference between aging while facing the limitations imposed by cognitive decline or living with more independence, full communication, and social participation. Hearing loss does not happen overnight, and precisely because it is gradual, many older adults do not perceive the real impact it has on the mind. The process is silent, but creates a dangerous cycle that begins in the ear and ends in the brain. The first link in this cycle is social isolation. When hearing becomes difficult, participating in family conversations, following social gatherings, or even understanding television requires effort. Little by little, the person avoids meetings, withdraws from group activities, and feels left out. This withdrawal is not only emotional, it deprives the brain of social and linguistic stimuli that are essential for keeping neural networks active. The second link is cognitive stress. An older adult with untreated hearing loss spends extra mental energy to decipher each phrase and each sound. This continuous effort overloads the brain, diverting resources from essential functions such as short-term memory, logical reasoning, and concentration. It is as if part of the mind were constantly busy translating distorted sounds, leaving less capacity to learn, store new information, or organize thoughts. This invisible effort creates mental fatigue, often mistaken for early symptoms of dementia. Over time, the third link emerges, the acceleration of cognitive decline. The brain is a plastic organ that strengthens when stimulated. When hearing fails and the older adult no longer actively participates in conversations and social experiences, Brain areas linked to language and memory fall into disuse. This disuse weakens neural connections, reduces the efficiency of communication between different brain regions, and opens the door to faster degenerative processes. What began as a difficulty in hearing clear voices in noisy environments may, years later, manifest as memory lapses, planning difficulties, or disorientation. This silent cycle also has emotional consequences. The feeling of being out of the conversation increases the risk of depression and anxiety, conditions that themselves accelerate cognitive decline. An older adult who no longer hears well not only becomes isolated, but also loses self-esteem, confidence, and motivation to engage in social and cognitive activities. The result is a domino effect. Less interaction, more mental effort, greater brain wear. Breaking this cycle is possible, but it requires early action. The introduction of hearing aids combined with family support and speech therapy follow-up restores clarity of sounds, reduces cognitive stress, and encourages social reintegration. This interrupts the chain of isolation, excessive effort, and neural disuse, creating a path toward cognitive preservation. That is why specialists emphasize that hearing loss should never be underestimated. It is the beginning of an invisible cycle that can compromise the mind in the long term. Hearing care does not need to begin in sophisticated clinics or with high-tech devices. Many times the first step can be taken at home, in a simple, quick, and cost-free way. Today, there are digital tools developed by universities and health organizations that allow a preliminary hearing test using only a cell phone or computer with headphones. These tests assess the ability to identify sounds at different frequencies and intensities, simulating what happens in a screening consultation. While they do not replace a medical diagnosis, they provide a first clear idea. Is my hearing within the expected range for my age, or are there already signs of significant loss? One of the most used tests is word perception in noisy environments. The logic is simple. The app or website plays phrases or numbers with background noise, like a conversation in a crowded restaurant, and the user needs to identify what was said. If the difficulty is high, that already serves as a warning sign to see a specialist. Another common test measures the perception of pure tones across different frequency ranges. Many people realize, for instance, that they can no longer hear high-pitched sounds well, like birdsong or jingling keys, but do not notice until the test objectively shows the loss. Beyond digital resources, there are practical signs that any family can observe in daily life, and that act as a home test. Turning up the television too loudly, constantly asking others to repeat phrases, avoiding phone calls because the voice on the other side seems distant, or confusing simple words in conversations are clear signs that something has changed in hearing. These small clues should not be ignored, because the sooner they are considered, the earlier the older adult can receive appropriate help. It is important to highlight that these at-home tests have motivational value. They show the older adult that the difficulty is real and not just the family's nagging. Often, denial is a bigger obstacle than hearing loss itself, and seeing a clear result, even if simple, helps convince them of the need to seek professional guidance. In the same way, these tests provide family members with a concrete argument to support the older adult's decision. Therefore, the first step is within everyone's reach. Before waiting for a consultation or feeling insecure, taking a test at home can be the trigger to begin the hearing care journey. It does not replace medical exams, but it opens the door to formal diagnosis, to the adaptation of hearing aids, and more importantly, to the preservation of memory and autonomy. After the first step at home comes the decisive moment, seeking professional help. The specialized consultation is the link that transforms suspicion into diagnosis and diagnosis into solution. The ideal path begins with the otolaryngologist, the doctor responsible for the health of the ear, nose, and throat. He or she evaluates whether the hearing loss is linked to simple and reversible causes, such as wax buildup or infections, or if it is already a process of sensorineural loss, typical of aging. In parallel, the speech therapist plays a central role in detailed assessment and in monitoring the use of hearing aids, often being the professional who will accompany the older adult for the longest period on this journey. But the big question is, when to seek help? The answer is clear. At the first sign of difficulty hearing, there is no need to wait for the loss to worsen. Signs such as turning up the television, feeling difficulty following conversations in noisy places, confusing similar words, or constantly asking others to repeat sentences already justify evaluation. Another critical point is when family members notice behavioral changes, such as social withdrawal or irritability, in communication situations. These signs may indicate that hearing is already interfering with emotional and cognitive well-being. In the consultation, some basic exams help map hearing loss. The first is the Bardo Pure Tone Audiometry, which measures hearing sensitivity at different frequencies and shows on a chart whether the loss is mild, moderate, or severe. Another important exam is the Speech Audiometry, which assesses the ability to understand words at different sound intensities, simulating everyday situations. In some cases, the ENT doctor may request imaging tests such as MRI to rule out neurological causes, or tympanometry, which evaluates the integrity of the middle ear. The great advantage of these exams is that they provide an objective map of hearing, allowing hearing aid adaptation to be personalized. It is not about one device for everyone, but about adjusting technology to the type and degree of loss of each patient. In addition, periodic follow-up, usually every 6 months or a year, is essential to recalibrate treatment according to hearing evolution and cognitive needs. Seeking professional evaluation early not only brings forward the benefits of hearing aids, but also prevents years of unnecessary mental effort and social isolation. This is the point where prevention is consolidated, when science and specialized care meet to restore sounds, preserve memory, and protect autonomy. For a long time, hearing aids carried the stigma of being uncomfortable, bulky, ineffective, and even a source of social embarrassment. Many older adults avoided using them because they felt marked by the appearance of the device, in addition to reporting physical discomfort and metallic artificial sound. However, technological advances of the past decade have radically transformed this scenario. Today, hearing aids are discreet, light, highly customizable, and with sound quality close to natural hearing, becoming allies not only for listening, but also for protecting cognition. The first major leap was in design. Current models can be practically invisible, adapted to fit inside the ear canal or behind the ear in minimal sizes. This evolution reduced the aesthetic barrier and made many older adults feel more comfortable wearing them in social settings. In addition, the devices are custom-molded, ensuring anatomical fit and comfort for long hours of use, which was previously one of the main reasons for abandonment. The second advance is in sound performance. With increasingly sophisticated microprocessors, today's hearing aids can differentiate voices from background noise, offering clarity in environments such as restaurants, churches, or family gatherings. This ability to filter sound is crucial to reduce cognitive effort, allowing the older adult to participate in conversations without mental fatigue. Some models use artificial intelligence to learn the user's most frequent sound patterns and automatically adjust volume and clarity, creating a personalized experience. Another revolutionary aspect was integration with the digital technologies. Today, hearing aids can connect to cell phones via Bluetooth, functioning as wireless headphones that transmit calls, music, and even the voice of family members in video calls directly to the ear. This turns the device into more than just a treatment. It becomes part of the older adult's digital life, enabling greater interaction with family and friends, even at a distance. Regarding price, there is still a perception that hearing aids are inaccessible, but the market is diversifying. There are affordable models with basic features that already offer good sound quality, and premium models with all advanced functions, with the specialist helping choose according to the patient's needs and available budget. In some countries, including Brazil, public policies and health plans are expanding access, distributing hearing aids free of charge through the public health system or offering discounts through agreements. This democratization is essential to reduce inequalities and ensure that more people can benefit from the cognitive advantages of hearing treatment. Finally, training and adaptation have also evolved. It is not enough to just hand over the device. Today, there are programs guided by speech therapists that teach the older adult to relearn how to hear, gradually adjusting sensitivity and helping the brain adapt to new stimuli. This increases adherence rates and turns the hearing aid into a truly effective resource. Thus, what was once seen as a nuisance is now consolidated as one of the most important technologies to preserve memory, communication, and quality of life. Putting on a hearing aid for the first time is not like putting on new glasses. While vision adjusts almost immediately to corrective lenses, hearing requires a gradual relearning process because the brain has spent years trying to decipher distorted or incomplete sounds. When the older adult begins to receive clear auditory stimuli again, it often feels strange. Their own voice may sound different, environmental noises seem exaggerated, and even forgotten sounds like birdsong or running water can cause surprise or discomfort. This moment requires patience and training, as the brain needs to reorganize its connections to once again process the fullness of sound. The first step in adaptation is gradual use. Specialists recommend starting with a few hours a day in quiet environments so that the older adult can get used to basic sounds without overload. Gradually, the usage time increases, and more complex situations, such as talking in places with several people or going out into public environments, are introduced. This progression allows the brain to readapt without generating frustration. It is common for reports of auditory fatigue to appear in the first weeks, but this is expected and a sign that the nervous system is reorganizing its connections. Another essential element is guided auditory training. Speech therapists use specific exercises that stimulate sound discrimination, word perception in noisy environments, and the memorization of sound sequences. There are also apps and digital programs that assist in this process, transforming adaptation into a practical routine that can be carried out at home. The goal is not only to hear better, but to restore the brain's agility in interpreting complex sounds, something that is lost after years of lack of auditory stimulation. Family support also plays a crucial role. Speaking face-to-face with the older adult, articulating words clearly, and avoiding speaking from behind or in noisy environments helps build confidence in using the device. Small adjustments in daily life, such as lowering the TV volume during conversations or ensuring good lighting to aid lip reading, increase the effectiveness of adaptation. More than technology, what is created is a supportive environment so that the older adult feels included and capable of fully participating in interactions again. The adaptation phase usually lasts from 3 to 6 months, but each person has their own pace. The most important thing is to understand that a hearing aid is not an instant magical solution, but a tool that requires continuous practice. When this process is well managed, it leads to a transformative point. The older adult not only hears better again, but also reduces cognitive effort, strengthens memory, and restores self-confidence. Auditory training is therefore a bridge between technology and the preservation of the mind, proof that relearning to hear is also relearning to live. Despite all technological advances, there is still a silent obstacle that prevents many older adults from treating hearing loss: prejudice. In most cases, resistance is not about price or access, but about the emotional and social impact of wearing the device. Many older adults see the hearing aid as a symbol of fragility, as if admitting the need for it meant admitting old age or incapacity. This stigma creates a barrier that delays diagnosis and prolongs cognitive suffering. In addition to prejudice, there is also lack of knowledge. Many believe that hearing loss is something natural with age and that nothing can be done, ignoring the fact that treating hearing can protect memory and independence. Others distrust effectiveness, remembering old, bulky, and uncomfortable devices, without knowing that technology has evolved into discrete and comfortable models. This lack of information contributes to delays of up to 10 years between the first signs of loss and the search for professional help, a delay that can be very costly for cognition. The family plays a fundamental role in overcoming these barriers. More than insisting, it is necessary to support. Avoiding phrases such as, "You can't hear anything," or "You have to use it because you bother everyone," is essential to not reinforce resistance. Instead, an empathetic approach works better, showing that hearing difficulty is not a personal flaw, but a common health condition with a solution. Positive testimonials from relatives or friends who use hearing aids also help to break stigma. Another important point is support during adaptation. The process can be challenging, and older adults who feel discomfort in the first weeks tend to abandon the device if they lack encouragement. Family members can participate in consultations, learn alongside the older adult to adjust the device, and celebrate small victories, such as being able to follow a group conversation or answer the phone without difficulty. These achievements reinforce the perception that the effort is worthwhile. It is also important to remember that resistance is not just an individual matter. Social prejudice also plays a role. Older adults report fear of comments, jokes, or strange looks when using hearing aids. In this sense, awareness campaigns and normalizing the use of these devices, just as has happened with eyeglasses, are fundamental. After all, no one sees fragility in someone who wears glasses, but rather an attitude of care. The same needs to happen with hearing. Overcoming barriers and prejudice is therefore as important as diagnosis or technology. A family that understands, encourages, and supports transforms the hearing aid from a symbol of old age into a symbol of autonomy. And when that happens, the older adult not only hears again, but also reconnects with their identity, their memory, and their active role in social life. When hearing loss is treated, it is not only sound that returns, but a chain of benefits that reverberates in different areas of life. It is the so-called positive domino effect. By restoring sound clarity, hearing aids reduce cognitive effort, allow greater participation in conversations, restore social life, and consequently stimulate memory and cognitive preservation. This process occurs because the brain once again receives complete and varied auditory stimuli, which strengthens neural networks that were in disuse and reactivates essential functions for reasoning and memory. One of the first noticeable effects is social reintegration. The older adult who previously avoided gatherings for being unable to follow group dialogues returns to family reunions, religious celebrations, and circles of conversation. This resumption of interactions reduces isolation, increases self-esteem, and creates an environment rich in cognitive stimuli. Each conversation, each story heard, and each shared laugh acts as a natural exercise for the brain, comparable to constant training of attention and memory. Another impact is the relief of mental overload. Without devices, the brain spends disproportionate energy trying to decipher incomplete sounds. With proper amplification, this energy is freed for other functions, such as planning tasks, remembering commitments, or learning new things. Studies show that older adults using hearing aids report less mental fatigue, greater willingness for cognitive activities, and even improved mood, as they no longer feel excluded from interactions. Auditory stimulation also has direct effects on FAO, brain plasticity. Neuroimaging research shows that areas of the brain that were underused in people with hearing loss reactivate after months of regular use of hearing aids. This reactivation strengthens communication between regions responsible for memory, language, and attention, creating a more solid foundation against cognitive decline. It is as if hearing works as a brain exercise that keeps the brain active and resilient. Furthermore, the domino effect extends to emotional well-being. Hearing the sounds of nature again, following beloved music, or simply clearly understanding a grandchild's voice generates a sense of belonging and joy that reduces depressive and anxious symptoms. This emotional improvement, in turn, reinforces social and cognitive engagement, closing a virtuous cycle. Therefore, treating hearing is not just correcting a sense, but triggering a chain reaction that impacts body, mind, and emotions. This positive domino effect shows that each small adjustment in the ear can turn into a great investment in memory, autonomy, and quality of life. Nothing translates better the importance of hearing treatment than the real stories of those who have lived, in practice, the difference between hearing poorly and relearning how to hear. Research numbers are clear, but when they gain a face, a name, and emotion, they become even more powerful. One example frequently cited at audiology conferences is that of older adults who, after years of isolation, re-engaged in social and cognitive activities just weeks after starting to use hearing aids. These reports show that the impact goes beyond hearing. It directly touches identity, memory, and a person's relationship with the world. Imagine the case of a 74-year-old man who had stopped meeting friends because he could no longer follow conversations. His family reported that his memory was failing, that he became easily irritated, and that he spent most of his time in silence. After starting to use modern hearing aids, Within a few months, he returned to playing card games, telling old stories, and even taking an interest in learning how to use apps on his phone. His memory, which seemed to be fading, was reignited by the return of social interaction and auditory stimulation. Another example comes from a 68-year-old retired teacher who had always taken pride in her memory for names and details. With hearing loss, she began to feel confused and forgetful, avoiding voluntary tutoring in her community. When she decided to seek help and began using hearing aids adapted to her degree of loss, she not only regained clarity of hearing, but also resumed her teaching activities. Follow-up studies showed that her performance in cognitive tests improved significantly, confirming that memory can be strengthened when the brain is once again stimulated by environmental sounds. There are also stories documented in clinical research. In the ACHIEVE trial itself, many participants reported that improved hearing helped them regain confidence in everyday tasks, such as cooking while listening to the radio, following the news, or simply talking on the phone with family members. This restored confidence is an indirect form of cognitive preservation because it keeps the mind active, engaged, and functional. The most striking aspect is realizing that many of these older adults did not know hearing loss was related to memory. They discovered this only after seeing the change in themselves. These stories show that hearing treatment is not just an abstract medical recommendation, but a concrete resource that transforms lives. Every older adult who decides to overcome prejudice, seek diagnosis, and use hearing aids is not only regaining sounds, they are regaining memories, relationships, and autonomy. These life stories make tangible the message already proven by science. Caring for hearing is caring for the brain, and each personal experience is testimony that this path is worth it. We have now reached the moment of turning all this knowledge into a practical, step-by-step guide, so that any older adult or family knows exactly what to do when faced with suspected or confirmed hearing loss. This is the hearing route, a structured path that begins with recognizing the simplest signs and ends with full adaptation to hearing aids, with the brain protected and memory stimulated. Step 1. Daily observation. The starting point is paying attention to practical signs, difficulty following conversations, constantly asking others to repeat phrases, exaggeratedly increasing the television volume, avoiding phone calls, or confusing common words. These clues act as the first alerts that hearing is changing. Step 2. At-home test. Even before the consultation, it is possible to do quick and free tests at home, available on reliable websites and hearing health apps. Evaluating the perception of words in noisy environments or hearing high-pitched sounds already provides a first notion of whether there is significant hearing loss. Step 3. Specialist consultation. The next step is to schedule an evaluation with an otolaryngologist and a speech therapist. These professionals confirm the diagnosis, identify the type and degree of hearing loss, and rule out reversible causes, such as excess earwax. Step 4. Objective exams. Pure tone and speech audiometry, in addition to complementary exams, provide the exact hearing map and guide the most appropriate treatment. These results are essential so that adaptation can be personalized. Step 5. Choosing the hearing aid. Based on the diagnosis, the speech therapist recommends the most suitable model, considering not only the degree of loss, but also lifestyle, social needs, and the patient's budget. It is important to understand that there are both basic and premium lines, all with real benefits. Step 6. Progressive adaptation. The older adult should start using it gradually, beginning in quiet environments and expanding to more complex situations. During this period, follow-up by the speech therapist ensures fine adjustments and guides auditory exercises that speed up relearning. Step 7. Family support. The family must be present, encouraging, avoiding criticism, and celebrating achievements. A supportive environment is decisive so that the older adult does not give up during initial discomfort. Step 8. Regular checkups. Every 6 months or a year, the device should be re-evaluated and adjusted according to changes in hearing or new patient needs. This follow-up ensures that the benefit is continuous and effective. Following this route is more than a medical recommendation. It is a practical brain protection strategy. Science shows that each stage completed reduces the risk of cognitive decline and strengthens memory, That is why the hearing root checklist should be understood as a map of independence and identity preservation. The earlier it is followed, the greater the gains in quality of life, autonomy, and healthy longevity.